So the world of parasites is intense. It's pretty gross. It's pretty creepy. Sometimes when people find out about parasites and they go down the rabbit hole, they can get emotionally wrecked. It's important not to get too manic about it because it will affect your mental health negatively. As humans, we're host to so many different pathogens, bacteria, viruses, fungi. Not all of this is negative. Because there does exist a symbiosis in nature, and microbes do play an important role in helping us maintain and regulate our immune system. Sometimes that balance can be messed up, and then the gloves have to come off. Today we'll focus on parasites, because it's a very complicated topic, and it has a special place when it comes to the world of fasting. A lot of people fast to cleanse their bodies, and when you start to cleanse, you inevitably end up in the world of parasites. Fasting is the embodiment of cleansing, so it's no surprise that often fasters will find something shocking in the toilet bowl after a cleanse. And then dry fasting is the most powerful form of fasting. So on top of an already powerful anti-parasitic action, you hit the parasites with dehydration. If they were in trouble before, this extra effect really wipes them out. If this is your first time hearing about it, welcome to the world of parasite cleansing. Welcome to the Dry Fasting Club. Please remember that all fasting should be done with medical supervision. All information provided here should be viewed as informational only and should never supersede medical advice. When you are adding fasting or making lifestyle and dietary changes, please discuss with your medical professional first. What are parasites and why should you be worried about them? There are various of different types of parasites. Some of the most common ones are things like protozoans, so like Plasmodium, which would be malaria, Giardia, and helminths, which are worms. These parasites can live in the intestines, blood, tissue, skin, and they cause a wide range of diseases and symptoms. Parasitic infections can lead to things like skin issues, digestive problems. Symptoms can range from mild discomfort to severe illnesses, depending on the parasite type and the host's immune response. Parasites can also manipulate the host's immune system and sometimes even control the host's behavior to benefit their survival and reproduction. The most common things that you'll see with parasite infections will be gastrointestinal issues, so things like IBS, sometimes even intestinal obstruction and damage. You'll see anemia, so certain parasites like hookworms feed on our blood and it can lead you to iron deficiency anemia. I know, kind of gross. You can get skin conditions and neurological symptoms. So when it comes to neurological symptoms, some parasites like Toxoplasma gondii can affect the eyes and inflame the brain. Some research even suggests possible links to various neurological disorders like mood disorders, bipolar disorders, and even schizophrenia. Now, what are the most common ways to deal with parasites? Fasting is a pillar of parasite cleansing, and dry fasting is the strongest form. Even without fasting, our body has so many ways of dealing with pathogens. And some of the main ones are called xenophagy and phagocytosis. These are different variations of autophagy. Autophagy is the process where cells break down and recycle components, playing a crucial role in defending against infections by capturing and destroying intracellular parasites. Through fasting, our internal autophagy skyrockets. Think of it like supercharging it with steroids. But we all know that our body may not always be able to handle everything on its own. That's where a ton of different herbal supplements can come into play. There's a reason most ancient cultures all had some form of anti-parasitic cleansing incorporated into their culture. Think of herbs like garlic, wormwood, black walnut, clove, oregano, and neem. In your preparation period, when it comes to dry fasting, You can pair lighter herbs with the liver cleansing ones, since a lot of them benefit both liver health and have anti-parasitic action. Sometimes you may need or want a more hardcore medication when it comes to something more life-threatening, or if your immune system is compromised. But most people prefer to go with lighter herbs as part of their cleanse. There's some solid reasoning to having a parasitic cleanse as part of your yearly maintenance program. I think it's very prudent, even having it as some form of fasting preparation protocol. Because if you're able to lower the overall toxicity load, and that includes parasites, you're going to have a much easier time fasting. Your body won't have to deal with the same amount of stress and toxins, which should result in milder Herxheimer detoxification reactions. Okay, let's quickly touch on some supplements and herbs when it comes to parasites. I'm currently working a lot with this thing called monolaurin, and I would love to do a deeper dive, and I hope to do so soon. You'll notice that I naturally incorporate a synergy with a lot of supplements when it comes to fasting, autoimmune illnesses, and anti-parasitics. My protocols involve ivermectin, berberine, niacin, and monolaurin in the form of coconut oil or monolauric acid. There are many more that you can incorporate, but they fall into a fasting preparation timing window. Some of them are very intense herbs and not something that you should be taking early on in your refeed, especially after a dry fast. So for example, the synergy with berberine is liver health, lowering blood sugar, kind of like metformin, and of course, anti-parasitic. And then there's coconut oil. It plays an important role in providing ketones and helping lower the stress after a fast. It helps it by providing ketones and helping the shift from ketosis to glycolysis. And then, of course, it has its anti-parasitic action due to its lauric acid and caprylic acid. Our bodies actually metabolize lauric acid very inefficiently, so they turn it into monolauric acid, but at really small quantities. So taking something like lauricidin is kind of like a biohack to speed up the process. Okay, let's quickly touch on some papers when it comes to fasting and parasites, especially for the newcomers and non-believers. Parasites like Toxoplasma gondii have evolved ways to avoid and exploit this process for their growth, leading to chronic infection. This study reviews how host cells use autophagy to control T. gondii and how the parasite manipulates this mechanism to survive. It's kind of scary because we know cats are big carriers and we know that it affects us neurologically. I mean, we laugh it off as something cute, but it's actually really scary. Scientific research has even made some links to bipolar and neurological issues related to these parasites. So maybe if you have cats, you really should take up dry fasting ASAP. No, seriously, what are you waiting for? This next paper is huge. This study investigated the effects of fasting on 2 types of parasitic infections in pigs. In the experiment, 40 pigs were naturally infected with these parasites. 2 separate fasting experiments were conducted. In one, 10 pigs were fasted for 6 days, and in the other one, 10 pigs were fasted for 10 days, with both groups having access to water as needed, so water fasting. After fasting, these pigs, along with 20 non-fasted control pigs, were examined. And what did they find? Well, 10 days of water fasting lowered the parasitic load in the pigs. That's great. They had a lower load and the parasites were moved further down the digestive tract, meaning that they were closer to elimination. But 6 days of water fasting was not enough to lower numbers. However, the reproductive ability of the worms was reduced in both fasting groups. That's very interesting. When we correlate this to dry fasting, this shows us that in terms of raw ketosis and autophagic power, a 5-day dry fast would be the equivalent of a 10-day water fast. But We have to take into account that this may also have had to do with the reproductive life cycle of the worms. If their reproductive cycle is more than 6 days, then it makes sense that a 6-day fast is not long enough to see numbers decline, but a 10-day is. Following this logic, an even longer fast would do more. But it seems that both fasts lowered reproductive ability of the worms. So over time, the parasite concentration in the body drops even after the shorter fast. This probably means that supercharged autophagy and an improved immune system plays a bigger role than strictly nutrient deprivation. This is also supported by a parasite study that looked at a high-fat diet, which I'll talk about in a second. Let's take a look at some questions that naturally come to mind when thinking about parasites and fasting. Can fasting-triggered autophagy eliminate parasites? The answer seems to be yes. Obviously, according to the study on parasites in pigs, it showed that long enough fasts lower parasite load. Now, is it autophagy or is it nutrient deprivation? I'm sure it's a mix of both. On top of autophagy, during a fast, our body is not focusing on digestion, which means the immune system can better focus and send more immune cells to the required areas. Think of it like more troops on the battlefield. Okay, next question. How do parasites survive during fasting? And what makes them vulnerable? So, some people think that a few days or a week of cleansing is enough, but are you targeting the parasite life cycles properly? Most are just guesses. Some medications are meant to be taken at certain intervals that match the specific parasites they are meant for. Some parasites have evolved mechanisms to survive mild periods of fasting. In these cases, wellness experts have advocated for longer fasts to really starve them out. When it comes to dry fasting, it's much faster because you bring in stronger autophagy and a bonus aspect of dehydration. You also need to find a parasite cleanse that works for you and maintain it. Maybe something like monolaurin, mix in some herbs, and definitely add in fasting. As some dry fasting club Discord members have mentioned, even things like turpentine have been used as an anti-parasitic by some. But what is the perfect protocol? Well, it doesn't really exist because the world of parasites is so complex. In a perfect world, you'd want to identify what specific pathogens you want to target. But a great protocol is one that you stick to and keep on improving over time and, most importantly, in harmony with your own body. That's important. Okay, let's do one more question that I think is very, very interesting. What role do ketone bodies, so deep ketosis, play in anti-parasitic action during fasting? So when it comes to ketones, the idea that they can help could be based on the fact that certain pathogens or parasites might prefer glucose as a primary energy source. So when it comes to ketones, the idea that they can help could be based on the fact that certain pathogens or parasites might prefer glucose as a primary energy source. So obviously a reduction in glucose availability, what happens in ketosis, might be an added synergizer that helps strengthen the anti-parasitic action. There's actually even more clues that ketones are helping. Check out this study called How a High-Fat Diet Allows Expulsion of Intestinal Parasite Worms. A researcher from the study was quoted saying, "We were quite surprised by what we found during the study. High-fat diets are mostly associated with increased pathology during disease. However, in the case of whipworm infection, this high-fat diet licenses the T helper cells to make the correct immune response to expel the worms." I love this because the fact that there's a documented link to high-fat diets with parasite cleanses means that there's probably a link between ketones and improved anti-parasitic action. This same researcher also published a study that showed that weight loss can also aid in the expulsion of a different gut parasite. This is further evidence for ketones because weight loss is attributed to burning fat, which creates a higher concentration of ketones in the body. This link tells us that autophagy seems to be the key player here, And armed with this information, it seems that fasting is looking more and more like the answer. So it seems we've come full circle back to my one true love. Nice. Okay, so let's wrap this up. There is so much more to talk about when it comes to parasites, like the intelligent use of anti-parasitics before and in between fasts to really craft a powerful strategy against these pathogenic bugs. Sure, we probably host some beneficial parasites, even if the connotation of the word parasite doesn't really work in this context. Did you know that mitochondria used to be bacteria that fused with eukaryotic cells? A sort of parasite that co-evolved with our cells, also known as the endosymbiotic theory, and it made large complex life possible. Other than that, we have things like monolaurin, ivermectin, wormwood, and so many other supplements, medicines, and herbs that can be used as tools to manage parasites. Striking the right balance between toxic and not too toxic is where you come out on top. There's a good reason why almost all ancient cultures practiced consistent intake of herbs and herbal teas and other things. Parasite talk is intense and sometimes even quite intimate. You can't let parasites rule your mind. Literally in the case of T. Gandhi and zombie-like parasites. But what I really mean is that some people can go crazy believing that everything they see in the toilet bowl is a parasite. Don't become like that. But what do you specifically do as your parasite cleanse if you have one? Is this something you'll be looking in a little deeper after this discussion? Let me know in the comments below. Be smart about it. Don't overstress. And make fasting a part of your anti-parasitic maintenance at the very least. Good luck on your healing journey. Thanks for sticking around. If you've dry fasted before, have any questions or requests for future topics, please leave them in the comments below. I always check the comments for inspiration and ideas. If you're looking for a chat or to set up your dry fasting plan, check out the dryfastingclub.com website and subscribe. You should also check out the Discord community where you can meet other new and experienced dry fasters. Remember, no two people are the same, so every fasting experience is unique. Thank you and good luck on your dry fasting journey.